It is the Banner Ravens podcast. Paul Mancano and Jonas Shaffer live on a Thursday in March. Jonas, did you hear that wonderful voice crack right off the top? We're diving right in.
I think that's your voice belying your excitement for March Madness, Paul. It's not just any Thursday in March. It's the damn best day of the Thursday in the entire world.
Gosh darn right. We are less than an hour away from the tip-off of the first real games of March Madness. That's right. We don't consider the first four part of March Madness. It officially starts at noon. We're going to try to get you all your Ravens news and analysis before the first tip-off so that you can enjoy some wonderful basketball for 12 straight hours and then 12 straight hours tomorrow and then like 12 more hours on Saturday and Sunday. We have so much to discuss here on the Banner Ravens podcast today. We are going to talk about who's in, who's out, and who's left in free agency. We're officially into the second wave of NFL free agency. We'll kind of provide a reset as to where we stand because I think a lot of people's heads might be spinning after a busy week last week. But first, Jonas, we have some reviews on Apple Podcasts to get to, because if you write us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, I will read it out here on the show. This one, Jonas, may come from perhaps a former professor or teacher of yours. That says, shout out from Montgomery Blair. I'm old enough to remember when the Colts left town and have been a diehard Ravens fan since 96. The Banner's coverage, and this pod in particular, is second to none. Insightful, witty, data-informed, and timely. I look forward to your podcast all the time. As principal of Montgomery Blair, special shout out to Jonas. Once a Blazer, always a Blazer. Jonas, your principal is chiming in.
Hashtag not my principal, but thank you. I don't, looking at the Wikipedia right now, Damon A. Monteleone. Thank you for writing in. But I had a different principal.
Wow. So you're saying not my principal.
I'm just saying.
Out of their way to write us a lovely review.
I'm just saying I don't know this Damon fella, but I definitely appreciate it.
They got to welcome you back and have you speak.
I guess so. There are so many more notable alumni than I.
Name one.
Steve
Montgomery
Ramos,
Blair.
one.
Oh, wow.
Stallone, Goldie Hawn. Bunch of juggernauts. Ben Stein.
Have any of them gone back and spoken at Montgomery Blair?
I don't keep track of their community relations, Paul. I'm a freaking adult, allegedly, at this point.
Well, when they strike out on all those people, they can come to you. We got another review from Bree26XX. I like this again. Somebody is taking their 5-star review and using it as a way to ask a question. They write, do y'all believe the Ravens will invest in the O-line in the draft? Do any of y'all have some hesitation on the coaches? I'm casually hesitant about the coaches. Casually hesitant is a good way to put that. The O-line is so concerning to me as of now. Am I dramatic? I don't think you're being dramatic at all as somebody who is being dramatic. Let's answer that real quickly. Let's talk about the O-line and the Ravens investments in the draft in that way. I think maybe the biggest investment they've made so far in the O-line is the hiring of Dwayne Ledford as their offensive line coach. They're clearly putting investment into the coaching of that position and hoping that will pay off. Obviously, they lose Tyler Linderbaum. They sign John Simpson to that 3-year, $30 million deal. They clearly have faith that Emory Jones Jr. can step in. But they do have the 14th overall pick where Venga Ioane, I got it right that time there, Jonas. Ioane, actually. I believe the emphasis is on the first syllable.
Oh, so you're correcting me. Okay.
I am correcting you now. The Penn State interior offensive line could be available for that 14th overall pick. I mean, Eric DeCosta likes to invest in the offensive line in the draft, but the last few drafts, it hasn't been very high. I mean, Tyler Linderbaum was a first-round pick. Roger Rosengarten was a second-round pick, but he has saved a lot of those offensive line picks for later in the draft, and as such, you're settling on a lesser pool of talent and guys who can't really contribute. I mean, Emory Jones Jr. fell to the 3rd round in part because of the injuries. Carson Vincent, we knew, was a project from day one. That's why he was a 5th round pick. Nick Samac was a day 3 pick. He's already gone. Garrett Dellinger is already gone, day 3 pick. Sala is already gone. He was a day 3 pick. Andrew Voorhees was a 7th round pick, and he struggled last year. So, you know, the Ravens clearly need to invest in the draft, in the trenches, in the offensive line, and they need to do it earlier than they have been doing.
Yeah, I think the fair expectation is that they're going to take a day 1 or day 2 pick on an offensive lineman. And I mean, I guess there's a world in which they don't, and like their first pick on day 3 is a center, because that's kind of where all the centers are clustered around in that, maybe 50 to 125 pick range. So, um, you know, unless you're really, really sure you don't want to overspend your draft capital on one of those guys, uh, I do think that obviously all the praise around Dwayne Ledford seems totally legit. It's not just Eric DeCosta saying last week that he's a masterful job in Atlanta and that he's did a great job developing players. Duke Manyweather, who does a lot of stuff with guys around the league. Um, Brandon Thorne, who we've had on the podcast as an offensive lineman analyst, has had nothing but praise for him. But I do want to kind of raise the red, not the red flag, like the blinking yellow light, the beige flag, that when he was in Atlanta, it's not like he was working with a bare cupboard. Like, if you're going just by draft capital alone, the Falcons line that they put out there, last year and the year before, was a lot more talented than what the Ravens have currently. Like, from left to right, that starting five was a first round pick, a second round pick, an undrafted center, a first round pick, and a first round pick, and I think a second round pick. I put first, but I think I meant second round because that was Caleb McGarry, who I think was maybe, I don't know, maybe he was like one of the last picks in the first round, but very, very talented on paper group, and a lot more talented than what the Ravens have, regardless of how these next couple weeks shake out, or how the draft shakes out. So I'm optimistic about what he could be. I was optimistic about what Chuck Smith could have brought to the Ravens as a pass rush coach, and it worked for a year or two, and then I think guys maybe stopped listening to him, or he started saying things to them that just didn't get through. So you're always a little bit skeptical of just how much of a game changer these positional coaches can be, unless you are hiring someone with as much of a track record as like a Jeff Stoutland. But it's going to be interesting because obviously you have a pick that's as valuable as 14. You want to make the most of it. And I wonder how much Eric DeCosta is going to be caught between like the economist in him and the sure thing talent evaluator in him, because there are a lot of guys like we don't know the next time that they might be picking as high as 14. And that is the kind of cost benefit analysis you're going to have to make when you are standing there, sitting there in the war room for the Ravens draft, deliberating over whether to take Vega Ioane, who could be like a day one starter, but maybe never deliver that kind of surplus value that you're looking for, or Jordan Tyson, or a whoever it might be, that Kenyon Sadiq, who might be there, who could give you more, but is probably almost certainly a riskier proposition for this 2026 roster.
Yeah, what scares me is no matter who they have at center and guard this year, they're going to be working with all new interior offensive linemen who have never worked together before and never worked with Dwayne Ledford before, except for the one kind of depth body that they brought in who has experience with Dwayne Ledford. I mean, these are positions where communication is key, and to have three guys who have not worked together before. I keep hearing John Simpson has familiarity and you're bringing him back. He doesn't have familiarity with anybody on this coaching staff. He doesn't have familiarity with the other guys on this offensive line except for Ronnie Stanley. So, maybe communication and experience together is overrated, because last year Andrew Voorhees had gotten some experience the year before. He had already been in the system. Daniel Falele was in his second year as a starter. Tyler Linderbaum was entrenched, and they all struggled last year. So maybe it is overrated, but I just have some concern there that communication will struggle while these guys figure each other out.
Yeah, I think the preseason and like the first month of the season will probably be rough for the Ravens, and obviously we don't know what exactly that schedule is going to look like until early May, I think is typically when it comes out. So if it's a gauntlet of some of the teams that we know are on this 2026 schedule, then it'll be trial by fire. But it's going to be interesting. Just like we don't know what Declan Hoyle is going to do as a coordinator to make these guys' lives easier. We don't know how much is going to be put on the shoulders of Lamar Jackson to sort out everything pre-snap. We don't know just kind of how quick a tempo the Ravens want to play at. Like, you think back the transition from Greg Roman to Todd Monken. Greg Roman, like, among the many, many complaints about his offense was just how often the Ravens would snap the ball with like 2 seconds left on the play clock. And then you get to Todd Monken, and not only is he snapping the ball at normal with normal amounts of time on the clock, but like those quick snaps where they have the kind of the sugar huddle, I think it's called, where like the offensive line just kind of hurries to the line of scrimmage, gets off the quick snap, usually done in short yardage. It didn't always work this past year, but I think it was a pretty effective, change of tempo the previous 2 years under Todd. So there's just so many different dynamic factors at play here. To say nothing of just we don't know what exactly is going to be asked of the center. How much of a mental burden are you going to be putting on that guy to get everything organized? Because you have to be extremely smart as a center, and that was among Tyler's greatest virtues. I think last year he definitely took a step back in terms of maybe being on the same page as Lamar or getting everything organized before the snap. You think of just how many guys were coming through the A gap unblocked, or how many guys in a just couldn't pick up, didn't see that were coming on loops and stunts or blitzes or whatever. So the Ravens need to kind of get their affairs in order, and that's why this offseason workouts and just the continuity that these guys have, and the lengths to which they're going, not just on the field but off the field, to build some chemistry are going to be so important.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's switch gears here. Let's talk about Max Crosby and hopefully kind of put a bow on this whole thing. Max Crosby spoke for the first time since the Ravens backed out of their trade for him, the trade that would have sent 2 first-round picks to Las Vegas for his services. He has his own podcast called The Rush Podcast. He talked about this whole saga. Let's get this out of the way first, Jonas. The most important part of this was that we learned that in those videos with Shabuzi, where he was celebrating years of sobriety, he was smoking cigars. It was not any other type of inhalant. He is not, as he says, California sober. He talked about a unique, crazy, wild, up and down roller coaster situation. Let's run through his side of the events here that he explained on his podcast. He said he flew to DC on Monday. Interesting that it's DC and not directly to Baltimore after the trade went down on Saturday night, because, as he said, there weren't any flights to Baltimore. So that's a 5-hour flight across the country, then drives up 2 hours to Baltimore. Goes to the Ravens facility on Tuesday, meets with a bunch of people, goes to get scans on Tuesday for his knee, for his labrum, for other parts of his body. He said he didn't get to meet with Jesse Minter until the end of the day Tuesday, and he didn't get to meet with Eric DeCosta for 5 hours, essentially, after he had already been to the facility. He said when he met Jesse Minter, the energy was off. He said Minter or DC or EDC, it's unclear who, said to him, one of our doctors has concerns about your knee. We really want you, but we want to get more opinions. So he goes back to his hotel. He's starting to spiral. He talks to Neil Elatraj, who is the one who did the surgery on his knee. He said, don't worry about any of that he's progressing just fine. He'll be ready for training camp. He talks to his agent while he's at the hotel. His agent said they're probably going to back out of this. Then someone from the Ravens tells him, we're going to get this deal done. Then 5 minutes later, his agent calls him and says, yeah, they're backing out of this. He packs up his stuff. He gets on a jet. He goes back to Vegas. He said, everyone's got their own conspiracy theory. No one will ever admit on either side what the real truth is or whatever. But ultimately, it doesn't even matter. I am where I'm supposed to be. I know that. I'll just say that. Jonas, what were your takeaways from Max Crosby's side of events?
It was interesting. First of all, I don't know if anyone's more qualified to talk on this subject than us, because in me, you have a bearded redhead with a history of reckless behavior, and then in you, we have a strong-jawed, dark-haired man in his, how old do you call, late 20s, early 30s?
30 on the dot.
There you go. 1 year younger than Trey Hendrickson. So I think we can speak from a position of empathy with exactly what is what is happening here. Like, this whole thing is fascinating. I know the Ravens don't want to engage with the public relations war that's ongoing. I think they made it pretty clear by them not talking until Eric DeCosta got up at the podium at the start of, the signing period for free agency. I think you saw that just from, again, them not really continuing to engage after this came out on Tuesday, I think it was. And this is like just great content in general, because It's like the NFL's version of the viral dress. Like, is it black and blue or is it white and gold? Because you can really talk yourself into either side being in the right on this. Like, we don't know what kind of details were omitted from Max Crosby. I think I was listening to uh, Andrew Siciliano, the former NFL Network, host, does the Yahoo podcast, and he made the point that basically one of the things that was not mentioned in Max Crosby's recounting of this whole situation was like, were there any Ravens social people there to greet him when he got to the facility on Tuesday? Because you would think that everything that we know about like how these kinds of big ticket signings, big ticket trades, high impact acquisitions proceed in the NFL is like you get the footage, especially in Baltimore, you get the footage of like them hopping out of the Sprinter van and meeting with the team personnel, meeting with the GM, the players, whatever. And if he had a kind of inconspicuous arrival, then maybe that suggested that the Ravens really had no plans to sign him at all.
Well, I will say the trade couldn't be official until the new league year started on Wednesday, though. So the Ravens probably couldn't post anything on social regarding it.
I know, but you're gathering stuff for when it does become official, is what I'm saying.
So you're saying, yeah. Are we wondering if video of his arrival is saved in the memory banks anywhere on the computers and the hard drives of one winning drive?
Right. Or if they just told the Ravens, very talented multimedia staff not to bother with it because they didn't think it was going to get done. You could say that EDC not meeting with Max until the end of the 5 hours was a telltale sign that he didn't, that he didn't have any plans of actually consummating this deal. Or you could talk yourself into the fact that, well, it was like a day after the Ravens roster had started to be rated. This was, he's in the trenches when it comes to free agency and negotiating deals and seeing what is out there on the market during one of the craziest stretches for an NFL GM. Like, is he really going to get out there and glad hand with his new acquisition for 15, 20, 30 minutes when the phones are ringing off the hook? He's supposed to be in his free agency war room talking to all of his tenants about what exactly might be a sensible deal, especially if like at that point they actually were considering pairing Trey Hendrickson with Max Crosby. So this is just a thing where, depending on what information depending on what conspiracy theories you have, depending on what team you're representing, you can really make a credible case for either side of this kind of nasty divorce that we have here.
Right. And I think both of these sides here, the Ravens side, Max Crosby side, are motivated to make themselves look better. There are details that are going to be omitted from all sides because the Ravens want to come out of here making it clear that they didn't do anything untoward and that they played by all the rules and that they weren't trying to screw anybody over. And Max Crosby is wanting to come out of this and with the opinion, with people thinking he's going to be just fine and his knee is perfectly fine and he handled this and his representation handled this great. And so everything that you kind of read and consume on both sides has to be viewed with a little bit of skepticism. Trust but verify is the ultimate journalistic motto here. I think Ravens fans at this point, based on our comments, want this whole thing to go away, want people to stop talking about it. And I understand it because the whole thing lasted 3-4 days and then it was over with. And then the Ravens moved on and they got Trey Hendrickson. I don't think it's going to go away in the minds of the average NFL fan. And I think that's partly where the frustration lies for a lot of Ravens fans here. I just am going to be fascinated to watch from our perspective the remaining careers of Trey Hendrickson and Max Crosby. And I think I'm just not looking forward to the end of the season where we're looking back at the stats and saying, well, Trey Hendrickson got 15 sacks and Max Crosby got 12, because what each player brings here is very different. Trey Hendrickson is going to get to the quarterback, but he's not going to be used in a lot of, in a lot of early downs in obvious run situations. Max Crosby is going to be, assuming his knee is okay, he's going to be on the field for just about every play for the Raiders, assuming he is still on the Raiders, which it certainly sounds like he is at this point. So, these conversations are going to keep on happening. That doesn't mean that Ravens fans want them to happen. And I think a lot of Ravens fans are just at this point ready to move on. Just be ready. It's going to have to be a conversation. And then the guys that they take with those 2 first-round picks are going to be factored into this whole thing. And it's going to be something that we're going to be talking about for a long, long time.
Yeah. And that's why I think after this podcast is done, Paul, you need to go into Photoshop and make a, growing up during the heyday of Joe Flacco in the DC area and following PFD commenter on Twitter, he had his is Joe Flacco elite Flacco meter, where it's just kind of the gauge of elite to not elite. And I do think you need to make did the Ravens win the trade gauge, because this is going to be something that we are talking about every week. I think you need to update it every week. I think you need to make it look good, but like also kind of ugly. I just think we need a weekly accounting of where we are in the winners and losers of this trade, because that's what fans are going to be doing after every single game, after every single sack, after every single injury that might befall either of these guys. It's just, like you said, it's not going to go away. It's there are a lot of other teams that kind of have had these pivot points where it's like, what if the Miami Dolphins had taken Justin Herbert instead of Tua Tagovailoa? And this obviously isn't to that level of significance because of just the relative importance of QB versus edge rusher. But this is going to be something that is going to be a war that is raging for the entirety of the season, even if the Ravens are the number 1 seed and the Raiders are well on their way to another top 3 pick next year. It's just 2 very high profile guys on 2 fan bases that clearly do not like each other and not afraid to make those feelings known. So I think we need to get a pretty accurate, up-to-date accounting for just where we are with this trade and what exactly the stakes are for this trade.
Yeah, not a bad idea. Good content idea. I'll hop into Photoshop right after this, Jonas. All right. Let's talk about an addition that the Ravens have made to their offensive line. We talked a little bit earlier about solving the puzzle at center now that Tyler Linderbaum has walked out the door. Danny Pinter, who is reportedly signing with the Ravens, could be part of that solution. 2020 5th rounder, 77 games over 5 seasons, 10 career starts. Only played 13% of the Indianapolis Colts offensive snaps last year and 17% of their special teams snaps. He can chip in at right guard. He can be a 6th offensive lineman. I think when a lot of people saw the Ravens sign a center, they thought, oh, here's our Tyler Linderbaum replacement. Danny Pinter is more depth and more of a body to have in there than he is a guaranteed starter by any stretch.
Yeah, we don't even know if he'll be ahead of Corey Bullock,
right?
On the depth chart. I think Corey showed a lot last year. He didn't play a lot because of just how incredibly healthy that offensive line was, but he was definitely impressive in the preseason. He showed those great movement skills. This is a position where I think Corey will probably get better just because he doesn't have a whole lot of experience at it, whereas Pinter is more experienced. This has been a position that he's been playing for a long, long time. So, this is, you see the reaction to the signing and people lashing out at Eric DeCosta and the Ravens. Like, well, this is the kind of move that everyone makes. It's just the fact that this is happening in the first to second wave of free agency, where maybe people caught the impression that this is going to be a guy who's going to be a locked-in starter. But we haven't seen the financials for it, and I think if it's more than like, I don't know, a couple $1 million a year, it would be surprising. The Jovan Gwynn fella that the Ravens signed last week, or agreed to terms with last week, I think basically got a close to veteran minimum salary, and they just need depth pieces, because last year they didn't really have anyone who could push those starters, even though they weren't really all that great. And I think that this is an important consideration as they just figure out what exactly they can do to make the difference between like the 5th best starter on their offensive lineman and the 3rd worst reserve, or the 3rd best reserve, much smaller than it was last year.
Yeah, you hope that these guys can step in and play snaps if they have to, but ultimately the Ravens do have to invest more in that center position, be it from the draft or from free agency or somewhere else. Before we do our free agency reset real quick, Jonas, we did get the details on Trey Hendrickson's 4-year contract worth $112 million with the potential to go up to $120 million. I saw a lot of people having different takeaways from how this contract is structured. There's $60 million guaranteed in this deal. $20 million signing bonus. It takes him through his age 35 season. That is a long time to have a pass rusher, and it carries a lot of risk in the length and the amount of money. So I think a lot of people were concerned as to how the money's being doled out here. There is a void year in 2030, which carries a $9 million cap hit. Of course, void years are ways to spread out the cap hit over the course of a contract and ways to help competing teams get guys on their deals. If the Ravens wanted to get out after the second year of this contract, let's say things are going poorly for Trey Hendrickson, injuries, poor performance, whatever it is, they would incur a $9 million cap hit for 2028, the third year of that deal, and then an $18 million dead cap hit for 2029, because the money for the $9 million void year in 2030 and then $9 million for 2029, both those numbers would be combined. You accelerate the cap hit. That's $18 million cap hit for 2029. That's not exactly ideal. If the Ravens wanted to get out after the third year of this deal, after the 2028 season, it would just be a $9 million dead cap hit for 2029. So, Jonas, this deal isn't exactly like Mark Andrews in that it has all the money on the front end and the Ravens can get out of it pretty easily after a couple years. It's also not devastating if the Ravens decided that they wanted to move on after a couple seasons.
Yeah, I mean, I think what Ravens fans maybe who aren't familiar with the cap or with the NFL landscape in general, like tend to forget is that pretty much all teams at this point have dead money on their cap. I think the Ravens do a much better job than a lot of teams.
The Dolphins have like $100 million.
Yeah. And with the cap going up every year pretty consistently, like an $18 million dead cap hit wouldn't be like prohibitive.
It's not backbreaking.
No. Is it great? No, definitely not. Like even a team as well run as the Eagles has kind of allotted like a huge heaping chunk of their cap space, I think in 2029 to dead money. I think maybe that's in anticipation of a new TV deal that might just completely reset the cap at that point. I think I saw that theory floated last year by Brett Coleman on Twitter. So we don't really know just how exactly this deal is going to age. We don't know if the core muscle surgery / back stuff that Trey was going through last year is going to be something that becomes a perpetual worry for him. Obviously, he's been pretty consistent over his entire career, coming from a Cincinnati front office, which I don't think has invested nearly as much money as the Ravens have in their, strength conditioning and their medical staff. Obviously, the Ravens are turning over their medical operations to like the former head of the New Zealand All Blacks rugby team, who's very well received, very well reviewed. We'll see if that does anything significant in terms of like changing the kind of injury paradigm for the Ravens. But you just hope that Trey is, that his game is built in a way where there is no sudden fall off, because you really do not want this guy to be an albatross on your books after 2 years, because that means that you've kind of done the thing that Eric Costa never wants to do, which is like have invested more money than he probably should have in an open market setting for a guy who was probably never going to be, giving you any kind of value toward the end of his contract. Like Eric Costa likes to sign guys in their mid to late 20s. Very rarely does he give someone at these kind of skill position players who depend on athleticism this kind of money early in their 30s, mid 30s. So it's definitely a risk. But obviously the fact that it doesn't have a huge amount of guaranteed money makes it a lot more manageable than like Nabi Madubuike's deal, for instance, or Marlon Humphreys or Roquan Smith. I guess the next pivot point to kind of wonder here is like whether the Ravens feel so confident in Trey Hendrickson's deal that they convert some of his base salary in future years to signing bonuses, which makes it harder to get out of. But obviously you get some of that front end cap space that can make you a little more flexible in 2027 or 2028.
Yeah, and it may sound pessimistic for us to already be talking about when the Ravens can get out of this deal that they just signed for a 4-year, this guy that they multi-time Pro Bowler that they just signed for a 4-year contract. But that's how you have to think, especially when you sign a guy who's 31 years old. I mean, a large part of the reason the Ravens were willing to trade 2 first-round picks for Max Crosby is because he's 3 years younger than Trey Hendrickson. And the Ravens do a very good job of keeping that dead cap hit number pretty low. You mentioned the Miami Dolphins, who, according to Spot Track, are at the top of the league in dead cap money with $115 million, large part of that to Tua Tagovailoa. The Saints are right behind them as a team that is terrible at handling their cap situation. The Ravens are all the way down there for right now at 21. They're 21st in the league with $18 million in dead cap money. So they're usually very good at this, which is another reason the Trey Hendrickson contract was so uncharacteristic for Eric DeCosta and the Ravens. You just have to think that way. And the comparisons, I know you're going to hate to hear this, Jonas, because I'm going to bring up baseball. The comparisons to the Orioles between these two franchises are endless. And you look at this Trey Hendrickson deal in a similar way to you look at the Pete Alonso deal, where you're hoping that you're going to get 2, maybe 3 good years from this guy. And then whatever you have to eat on the back end, you have to eat. Because guys who are 30, they're both 31 years old. Those guys don't tend to age particularly well. It's just father time comes for all of us. And you're just hoping that you can maximize the window that you crack open by getting a talent like Trey Hendrickson or Pete Alonso.
But Trey Hendrickson doesn't have a fun nickname, as far as I'm aware. Bringing up
there's no
football.
There's no polar bear type nickname.
No.
Can we give Trey Hendrickson a nickname this year? Would we have to clear it with him? You are the master of the nicknames, Jonas. You came up with Tiny Horse for Keaton Mitchell.
That's true. And look how that caught on.
Doesn't mean it wasn't clever. All right. Shall we do a free agency reset? Because I think a lot of fans, they're still a little bit, their heads might be swimming as to how everything went down the last couple weeks. All right. Let's talk about who's in, who's out, and who's left here. Who's in? These are the guys that the Ravens have signed so far in free agency. Trey Hendrickson, safety Jalen Hawkins, guard John Simpson, tight end Durham Smythe, cornerback Chidobe Awuzie, and Tyler Huntley. Who is out? These are all the guys that were with the Ravens that have since left. Tyler Linderbaum, Jordan Stout, Isaiah Likely, Draymond Jones, Charlie Kohler, Ardarius Washington, Jake Hummel, Alohi Gilman, Patrick Ricard, Keaton Mitchell, David Ajabo, and the most recent name on this list is Tylan Wallace. It was reported yesterday that he is signing a deal with the Cleveland Browns and had a nice goodbye message to Baltimore fans yesterday. The Ravens' own free agents who are out there: Kyle Van Noy, Joseph Noteboom, Brent Urban, Taven Bryan, Daniel Falele, DeAndre Hopkins. Jonas, when you're looking at all of the guys who are left out there, not just the Ravens' own free agents, but we're going to get into some of the other guys around the NFL. Do you believe EDC when he said they're not going to break the bank and that they sort of already did break the bank for Trey Hendrickson? Do you think that he has one more move in him, one more big splash in him, or do you think the Ravens pretty much made their big swing and it was on Trey Hendrickson?
It's tough to tell because, they've got the close to $10 million in effective cap space, according to Brian McFarland, which accounts for future expenses such as the draft, practice squad, in-season replacements. They could get more space by, releasing Broderick Washington. They could get more space by releasing Justice Hill, although I think that's probably less likely now that Keaton Mitchell did not resign. But, you also have to account for the possibility that, or I guess the expectation that Lamar's cap hit, which was hit, cut pretty severely because of the restructure, is going to rebound if and when, he signs that extension. Because when you get the extension, you have that prorated signing bonus, which gets tacked onto your current cap hit. So I think as entertaining as it is to think about the Ravens maybe having the money to sign someone like a Jawan Jennings, it's a little bit less realistic when you think about, is that going to cost $50 million a year? What's going to be the cost in year one? How much space do we have in year two? With 2027 already being kind of pretty narrow in terms of the cap space available. So I do think it's probably realistic that the big moves over the next couple of months are going to have to be in in the draft, and I just don't know. I mean, like, to be honest, a lot of the best players who would have made sense for the Ravens are now on other teams. Like, there are very, very few of your top 100 free agents entering this offseason that are still unsigned. I think Juwan Jennings would have made sense. Maybe he still makes sense, but it just, do you really have the cap space to be able to afford him? So I do think that's probably more, solid starters who aren't going to be playing premium positions, or maybe guys who come with injury risks that you're signing and hoping uh, that they are able to kind of live up to the expectations of a 16, 17 game season. So break the bank. It's hard to see them doing it because of what they just paid for Trey Hendrickson and some of the other potential, deals they might have coming up next. But it's we could certainly fantasize about it.
Yeah, let's fantasize about it. I'm going to play devil's advocate here, and I'm going to say Juwan Jennings is still out there on the free agent market a week and a half into free agency. If he's not getting the kind of offers that he thought he was going to get in free agency, why not be the team that comes in and swoops in and gets him? I think Juwan Jennings is a contested catch artist, could be the kind of X-receiver that the Ravens have been craving and have not been able to get with the DeAndre Hopkins experiment failing last season. He's still only going to be 29 this season. PFF's number 25 free agent. He had 643 receiving yards last year, 9 touchdowns. He's a red zone weapon, 18 contested catches, according to Pro Football Focus. I don't know how much he's going to cost, but if he's lingering this long, maybe fewer and fewer teams have the cap space to sign him. If you're going all in with Trey Hendrickson, why not continue to push your chips into the middle of the table? I don't think, and I wouldn't recommend that the Ravens draft a wide receiver early in this draft because they have to focus so much on the offensive line and the trenches. So why not splash out in free agency and get somebody, especially with the concerns you have about Rashad Bateman and his horrible 2025 season?
Yeah, and it's probably not likely that AJ Brown is going to be at a price point that you want to afford if you're trading for him. It's probably going to cost you first round draft capital, which obviously we've seen from Eric DeCosta, not really all that opposed to that if you're getting a difference maker in return. But it seems like Jennings is probably their best option for getting a impact veteran at this stage in the offseason.
So I would say Juwan Jennings to me is the number one guy at the top of the list. If you're looking at centers, you want to sign somebody with more starting experience than Danny Pinter and Corey Bullock. There are a couple guys still out there. Eason Posich, who's the longtime Browns and Seattle Seahawks center. He's 30 years old, 97 career starts. He hasn't been great the last couple seasons, and he did tear his Achilles at the end of the season. So if you give him a 9-month recovery, I don't expect he'll have an Ardarius Washington level recovery. You came back in 6-7 months. If you have a 9-month recovery, he could be ready for the start of the season. He's still out there. And then Lloyd Cushenberry, who's 29 years old, 80 career starts in 6 seasons, 4 with Denver, the last 2 seasons with the Tennessee Titans. Released at the start of the offseason, so you wouldn't factor into the comp pick formula. Injuries are also a concern, though, when it comes to Lloyd Cushenberry. Either of those guys tempting you, Jonas?
I think Cushenberry, just because it was only 2 years ago that he was viewed as an ascendant player. Like, he signed a 4-year, $50 million deal with the Titans. Did not last long. I think we probably should restate just the importance right now of the comp pick formula. Like, if Eric DeCosta wants to kind of get back to building the roster the way that we've become accustomed to seeing him build that roster, which is like, you want to sign guys who either don't cancel out some of the higher picks that you're going to get, and obviously signing Hendrickson wipes out that third rounder that they would have been entitled to with the Tyler Linderbaum departure. But you still want to hold on to the 4th or 5th rounders, whatever it's going to be. And the best way to do that is by either signing very, very cheap contracts or by signing, guys who have been released. And it's not just, I think we've talked about in this podcast, it's not just like the Cushenberries who might apply there. It's the guys who might get released after the draft because a team figures out that, the guy that we have in the draft is a lot better or a lot more cost effective. And it obviates the need for someone else. So we're just going to release them. Like, you think back to why Morgan Moses became available to the Ravens, 5 years ago, whenever that was. I think it was because the Commanders / Redskins, whatever they were at that point, didn't feel like they needed him at that point in the offseason calendar, and it was past the the date in the offseason where it would apply to the comp pick formula. So he became available. The Ravens signed him, got a couple great seasons out of him. They didn't have to worry about just shooting themselves in the foot with any comp pick considerations.
Obviate. It is a verb. It means to anticipate and prevent something such as a situation or make an action unnecessary, according to Merriam-Webster. That is our word of the day, Jonas. Obviate. Outstanding word that you just used there. All right. More free agents along the offensive line. We talked about John Simpson, Emory Jones Jr., but if the Ravens want to get another guard to throw into that mix, they already brought in John Simpson from the 2023 team. Why not bring back the other guard that he was paired with, Kevin Zeitler? He's going to be 36 this season. We talked about him on our free agency bracket podcast, coming off a one-year deal with the Tennessee Titans. He's had to settle for these kind of one-year deals with the Lions and then the Titans this past year. He's still pretty good. I mean, PFF had him as the number 11 guard in 2025. I know that's not an end-all be-all, but hasn't played fewer than 15 games in a season since 2024, so he's pretty healthy. Why not have John Simpson at left guard, Kevin Zeitler at right guard?
I think it just comes down to how
do you want to block Emory Jones Jr.?
Well, just the athleticism at that position. Like, obviously he's athletic enough. He's just an incredibly strong person. Just from getting to know him, and did a feature on him and his wife a couple of years ago, and just the dedication that he has to being in the weight room. But probably not the best fit for an offense that's going to be on the move as much as maybe the Ravens will be with Dwayne Lethford and the outside zone stuff that he majored in Atlanta. So it's been interesting to see just how much kind of prejudice there is against some of these older offensive linemen in free agency. Like, it's
Greg
kind of
Van
wild
Roten.
It's kind of wild that Isaac Seumalo got basically an identical deal to John Simpson, despite being clearly a better player than him these past couple of years in Pittsburgh. I think probably, like, truthfully, I would have preferred Seumalo to be, your left guard, your right guard on this Ravens team in 2026 to John Simpson, given John's flag history, given just some of his limitations as a blocker. But if Seumalo is only getting $10 million a year at a few years younger than Kevin Zeitler, then it could be a situation where Kevin Zeitler just becomes increasingly cost effective, and maybe that price tag keeps dipping to a point where not only does he become like the best option available for the Ravens, but a guy who could really give you a lot in terms of your bang for your buck.
Right. If it's like a 1 year, $6-7 million deal, why not at that point? Couple guys on the defensive front. Calais Campbell, we've talked about, the ageless wonder. He's going to be 40 this season, and he is still playing like he's 25, 6-time Pro Bowler. He did his reunion tour last year with the Cardinals. Why not have another reunion tour with the Ravens? He had 6.5 sacks last year and 18 quarterback hits in 17 games. He's ridiculous. And then Jadeveon Clowney, another reunion tour guy. Going to be 33 years old this year, still playing pretty well. What I like about Jadeveon Clowney, and this is something that we said the first time the Ravens signed him, is that his run defense is underrated. And when you have somebody who is either going to be playing on the opposite side as Trey Hendrickson or spelling Trey Hendrickson, having somebody who is good against the run is crucial.
Yeah, I think that they need that hard edge setter, and it would ideally be someone with a little more pass rush juice than Tavius Robinson has shown that these past couple of years. Maybe Tavius Robinson takes another step forward this offseason, and he becomes a guy who could become a viable Robin to Trey Hendrickson, Batman, but still not sure. I think probably what's interesting about the Calais Campbell angle is just like the Ravens have had the money to splash around and look for that kind of 3 technique defensive lineman. Like, if they were truly concerned about Nnamdi Madubuike's viability as a starter or contributor this year, then you would have thought that they would have been a little bit more aggressive in finding some help there. So maybe this is just them kind of signaling to Ravens fans, to Ravens media, that they do feel good about where Nnamdi is. Obviously, we've all seen the clips of him working out in Texas. I've reached out to his trainer, hoping to get some sense of where exactly he is, what he's kind of telling people, but have not heard back from him. I feel like it's probably just shutting it down to media in general right now. But like I said, I know people are just down on this defensive line in general, but like I want to restate, Travis Jones was one of the best nose tackles in the NFL last year. Like I was looking, just going on Sports Info Solutions and looking at just the amount, who was leading the league in pressures from the 1 tech to the 3 tech. So you're over the center to outside the from the 0 tech to the 3 tech. So from over the center to outside the guard's shoulder. And Travis Jones finished like top 5 overall in the entire NFL. And that was while getting so many double teams and being in a lot of situations where it was really maybe not all that advantageous to be a pass rusher. So I think we're probably underrating the possibility of what a Travis Jones healthy Nnamdi BK pairing might be for this Ravens defense. Like that could be the strongest part of this team overall, outside quarterback, assuming we get a vintage Lamar season. And that's a really, really exciting prospect, but we just don't know how realistic it is with all the radio silence that we've gotten on the Nnamdi situation.
Yeah, it's almost not worth speculating just because we still have absolutely no idea what's going on there. There is a reason that the Ravens extended Travis Jones on a 3-year, $40 million deal at the very end of the season last year.
And by the way, that deal looks a lot better compared to what the Eagles gave to Jordan Davis.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a 3-year, $78 million extension. And I think I know Jordan Davis has physical skills that are a little bit more high end than Travis Jones, but like not all that much more. And I think Travis Jones has been more impactful as a pass rusher. I mean, I think I'd probably truthfully rather have Travis Jones on my defense than Jordan Davis, just based on the level of consistency that we've seen from him. And, Jordan Davis he was great last year for the Eagles, but it was kind of rough going for him those first 2 years. So I think that could be a contract that becomes like, oh my God, the Ravens are paying what for this guy who's maybe one of the best 3 or 4 nose tackles in the entire NFL.
And sometimes those late season extensions work. Sometimes they don't. I mean, so far it's looking like the Mark Andrews extension may have been a little bit premature. It was around the same time that they extended Travis Jones to a very similar deal, like 3 years, $40 million is pretty much what Mark Andrews signed. So maybe they they hit on Travis Jones and maybe missed on Mark Andrews, but who's to say how those contracts will age? All right. And then 3 more names I want to bring up who are still out there in free agency. Tight end is a position that the Ravens could still add. I still think they're going to the draft. And for a lot of these positions, the Ravens could just pass on these free agents and say, we'll wait until the draft. The Ravens love to double dip at tight end in the draft. I think they're best. And this is a great tight end draft from everything that we're hearing. So I expect the Ravens to take a day 2, day 3 guy to replace Isaiah Likely. If they wanted to sign one of these free agents, though, David Njoku is still out there, who reportedly visited with the Ravens yesterday. Coming off a down season last year, under 300 receiving yards. First time he's had fewer than 300 receiving yards in a season since 2019. But maybe there's a little bit of more juice left in there, and you take him away from the Browns and Shador Sanders, and he performs better. And then Jonnu Smith, 31 years old, also coming off a down season with the Pittsburgh Steelers, didn't quite fit in that offense. Maybe you put him in a different situation. He succeeds as well. And then one more guy I want to mention, punter, Jamie Gillan, the Scottish Hammer, Jonas. How excited would you be if you got those luscious locks in the Ravens locker room?
It'd be great. And he's from, he grew up went to high school at Leonardtown, in Leonardtown, Maryland. So,
all right. Went to Arkansas Pine Bluff for college.
Going from Flores, Scotland, wherever the hell that is, to Leonardtown to Arkansas Pine Bluff probably gives him a worldly perspective that you and I sorely lack. But yeah, great head of hair. Obviously, I think the Ravens really took a hit to their facial hair game this offseason when you lose Tyler Linderbaum, who had a great mustache for last year, and then you Charlie Kohler, obviously long hair, mustache, that's out the window as well. So they need some variety. I don't know.
And it looks like Charlie Kohler cut his hair too since signing with the Giants, right?
Do we think it's a situation where who's the Bible character, Samson, cut his hair and he lost all of his ability?
I hope not, for Charlie's sake.
He's gonna go soft now that he's in California.
All right. those are the remaining free agents, some guys to keep an eye on as free agency continues. Of course, the Ravens are slowly turning their attention towards the NFL draft, which is a little more than a month away. In the meantime, you can subscribe to The Banner, $1 for 6 months.
Shout out to the Baltimore Banner.
Listen to Carmelo Anthony. And look at this, Jonas. It is 12:08. We got you out with 2 minutes to spare before tip-off of the first game. Do you know what the first game is?
I don't. I'm just very grateful that I did all my bracket stuff beforehand.
It's almost always is 7-10, isn't it? It's either a 7-10 or an 8-9.
Do you know what it is?
No, I have
TCU,
no idea.
Ohio State. Yeah, 8-9.
8-9. It's okay. It's always an 8-9 game. Oh, it's 12-15. I always thought the first game is at 12-10. All right, so we have now 5 minutes to relax. Thanks so much for tuning in. At Jonas_Shaffer is his handle. I'm at Paul Mancano and at All Banner Sports. We have so much more coverage for you on our website, on our social media feeds. We'll have another podcast for you at some point next week, Jonas, and then we'll really start to dive into some NFL draft prep. Get on some of our friends to break down this draft class that we thought the Ravens wouldn't have a first round pick in, and well, they got it right back.
Things changed. Yeah, this is gonna be a really, really fun to talk about this draft because I think my thesis for the next month or so is that like Eric DaCosta has shown us that literally anything is on the board, not just this year with them trading the 2 first-round picks and then taking them back, but also last year with making a pick that we certainly didn't expect with Mike Green. Obviously, that was a bet that in terms of on the field and off the field conduct, or I guess mainly off the field conduct, definitely met the Ravens' expectations. But maybe the Eric DaCosta's tolerance for risk is a lot higher than it has been in years past, considering where this team is and maybe where he feels his seat is in terms of its relative warmth. So I think really anything is possible when you're talking yourself into what could be on the table at number 14 overall.
Certainly.